Hi, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Today, I'll be presenting a snapshot of my thesis, The Slash, a Radical Mark for Contemporary Life. My name is Peter Ahlberg, and I'm a graphic designer, educator, author, writer. And even without seeing it right away, you know intuitively that there are slashes between each of those designations. It's precisely this phenomenon and all that it implies and allows for that drove me to not only anchor my research in the visual and typographic aspects of the slash, but also the question of its contemporary cultural significance. But first, a little history. The slash, as it might be hard to believe, was actually created by someone. The medieval Italian scholar, historian, philosopher Boncompagno da Signa around 1200 AD, give or take. It was one of a two-part punctuation system, which included the diagonal slash, known as the virgula sursum erecta, or upright virgule, suggesting a short pause. Its companion was a horizontal dash, known as the virgula plana, or level virgule, suggesting a long pause. Over time, the slash and its intended use of suggesting a brief pause morphed into what we know today as the comma, thus laying the groundwork for the lowly diagonal line to find new adapters, names, and uses. 600 years later, the slash contemporary relevance was ensured when it was included as part of the keyboard of the second mass-produced typewriter, the Remington II, around 1880. A decade later, the five biggest typewriter manufacturers merged to form the Union Typewriter Company, resulting in the establishment of what we know today as the QWERTY keyboard, which remains the unofficial configuration for typing machines. Over the next century, the slash was a functional mark in business and mathematics, in addition to typewriter art, its siblings ASCII art, and emoticons and emojis. In conjunction with its practical and pictorial uses, the slash became an important tool in computer coding languages by the mid to late 20th century. Common familiarization with and a seemingly exponential, varied, and interpretive use of the mark appears to correspond with the explosion of the internet in the mid-90s through to today. Pay close attention, you'll begin to see it everywhere, not only in the address bar of your web browser, but on Reddit, in lieu of bullets and commas on blogs, in written text in mainstream journalism, TV show titles, book covers, institutional logos, and more. The slash is, or now was, hiding in plain sight, as perfectly articulated by our esteemed Alex Deleuze. In retrospect, my interest in the slash comes from a long-standing reluctance to be, quote, one thing, along with my fascination with history, and when done right, its ability to convey pertinent knowledge and insight about today. To that point, my question going into the semester was essentially, is the slash uniquely relevant to contemporary life, be it in ways we identify, communicate, and/or interact, and why? And if so, is it limited exclusively to the function as a piece of punctuation, or are there other areas of significance, conceptual or symbolic? In other words, could I find deeper meaning in such a minuscule mark? My research included, obviously, historical writings and accounts about da Signa and the scholars and rhetoricians of his time. It also included typographic archival materials as best as they could be located and accessed during the pandemic. Writers such as M.B. Parks, author of Pause and Effect, An Introduction to the History of Punctuation in the West, and Keith Houston, author of Shady Characters, were important in historically situating the slash. I had the great pleasure of interviewing the American type designer Tobias Frere-Jones, who noted that his own research on type and type foundries, primarily the 19th and 20th centuries, characters such as the slash, asterisk, at symbol, etc., were essentially thought of as generic marks, which a foundry would advise on and tack onto the purchases of formal and more uniformly designed fonts. Interestingly, Frere-Jones said that in the early 90s, while working at Font Bureau, he and his colleagues decided to abandon this tradition and committed to designing every character with equal care and attention, no matter how bad the return on investment was. See his disdain for the 3/5 fraction. He also mentioned that designing the slash required unique considerations, namely that it must contrast in line weight against the letter forms, and that the negative space left and right of the slash needs to be carefully balanced as to allow for differentiation, but not unnecessary interruption of the overall font set. He concluded our interview by noting that, quote, "I think the slash is very useful today because it's super compact typographically and very potent linguistically." My research expanded and included interviews with the writer, computer programmer, theorist, professor Alexander Galloway, author of Protocol, How Control Exists After Decentralization, renowned architect Daniel Libeskind, former art director and artist Joe Mama Nitzberg, and Luke Turner, the British artist, activist, and author of the Metamodernist Manifesto. Taken together, each interview pushed my analysis and interpretation of the slash outward and away from the rigid constraints of typography. Galloway mentioned in mathematics that the diagonal edge of a right triangle is referred to as irrational. Libeskind spoke eloquently about the intentionally destabilizing effects of the oblique as utilized in his design of the Jewish Museum in Berlin and its Garden of Exile. Mama Nitzberg mentioned a great quote by the actress, model, writer Hari Neff, where she says, quote, "I don't know that I'm good enough as an actor to just be an actor. I don't know if that's like an economic prognosis, but I enjoy being a slashy," a wonderfully contemporary way of expressing multiplicity. Turner suggested that the slash allows for multiple simultaneous voices and not just, as he put it, a middle-aged cis white man speaking in the Queen's English. I consulted the Temple of Good Writing, quote unquote good writing, The Elements of Style by Strunk and White. They despise the slash and its cousin, the much maligned and or bipartite coordinating conjunction, a term, by the way, that I've tried to coin in my thesis. In that they write, it's a device or a shortcut that damages a sentence and often leads to confusion or ambiguity. The Wikipedia Manual of Style essentially concurs and explicitly discourages the use of the slash because the mark, quote, suggests that the words are related without specifying how. Synthesizing these insights, I write in my thesis, to know the story of the slash is to know of a character who spent most of its life toiling, waiting for its moment. From poetry to currency to the back pages of typed specimen catalogs, it was always on stage, but never the star. That the disparate works of such luminaries as Judith Butler, here you can see my analysis of every use of the slash in their book, Bodies That Matter, Daniel Libeskind, and Tobias Frere-Jones emerges around 1990, points to an important moment. Considering at the same time, the pioneering internet service provider, America Online, was on the cusp of its ascent. By 1995, it would have 3 million subscribers. It's difficult not to see the twilight of the 20th century as an inflection point of the slash and all it's come to signify. Today, its place is not limited to one specific area of life or another. As a device for communication, identity, and interaction, it's best thought of as having reached a kind of critical mass, a kind of critical mass across a network of important, but at first seemingly unrelated nodes. Is there a causal relationship between the work of Lucio Fontana, queer theory, and the newest Slack commercial? No. But can we see them as more casually connected, possessing shared, uniquely contemporary qualities and concerns that relate to and overlay each other? Yes. As histories are reconsidered, dogmas deteriorate, and societies splinter and realign, our contemporary moment has found itself in need of a mark to suit the demands of its era. Paradoxically, the clarity required is one that must allow for plurality and hold space for ambiguity and or contradiction, qualities that the slash has embraced as it proves to be a symbolic expression and an optimal, if not also radical mark for today. So where do we go from here? My thesis covered a lot of ground in 5,500 words, and with more time and space, there is, I believe, a great story to tell. A book project about the slash in the spirit of shady characters and semicolon? Maybe. An essay on being shapes and lines? I'm up for it. Unrelated to the slash, I have about a half dozen pitches waiting in the wings, including a speculative essay on what it would look like if 432 Park Avenue was seized using eminent domain and converted into a publicly owned and operated vertical farm. Want to talk more about working together on something? Please contact me here. As of the end of this week, I will add another slash to my professional identity, and I'd love to put it to use. I'd love to hear from anybody and their friends. Thank you so much for your time. Special thanks to Molly, Eric, Alex, Margot, and all the other great faculty, visitors, and critics we had throughout the year. And of course, huge congratulations to everyone who presented this afternoon. Thanks for a great year, everybody.